In the remote ridges of eastern Kentucky, where the mountains fold in on themselves and the hollers sink into darkness even at midday, there lies a patch of land locals call the Hollow of Hunger. Few will point it out on a map. Fewer still will speak the name of the family who once ruled it, the Hales. The Hale Clan didn't just live in isolation, they thrived on it. Cut off from towns, schools, and churches. They grew up with no laws but their own, and no diet but what they could kill or steal. Generations of intermarriage left them pale and twisted, their bodies marked by deformities that outsiders whispered about but rarely saw. What made them more than a cruel rumor, though, was their appetite. The earliest tales come from the 1920s, when logging crews moving through the mountains began to vanish. Tools and wagons were left behind, but the men were gone, as if swallowed by the trees. Weeks later, bones were found downstream, gnawed clean, floating like driftwood. Locals whispered that the Hales had discovered a taste for flesh, not just of animals, but of men. The Hales didn't hide what they were. In fact, they flaunted it. Travelers who strayed too close to the hollow often spoke of hearing voices in the dark, mocking laughter that followed them for miles. Some swore they saw figures standing naked in the tree line, smeared in mud and blood, holding butcher knives. One merchant who narrowly escaped described them as a pack of wolves, but standing upright, with grins too wide for their faces. By the 1940s, the Hale clan's reputation was so blackened that entire counties avoided the region. Farmers abandoned land rather than risk crossing their paths. The state sent officials to investigate more than once, but each time the effort ended in disaster. One group of deputies who rode into the hollow never returned. Their horses were found days later, stripped to bone, reins dangling, and then there was the night of the fire in 1952. Flames were seen rising from the hollow, painting the sky red. Locals claimed the Hales were burning something, or someone. One witness, a farmer's son, who crept close, swore he saw bodies piled high, writhing even as the flames consumed them. Whether they were prisoners, sacrifices, or members of the clan themselves could never be confirmed. What is certain is that the fire raged for 3 days, and when it finally burned out, the smell of cooked meat lingered in the valley for weeks. But the most horrifying stories came later, from those who claimed to have escaped. One such man, known only as Earl, staggered into a town tavern in 1961, clothes shredded, eyes wide with terror. He said the Hales had taken him while he was hunting rabbits, dragged him into their cabin. He spoke of a long table covered in cracked plates, each piled high with roasted flesh, of children with sharp teeth, gnawing bones like dogs, of women whose eyes were blind but whose hands never stopped reaching for him, clawing, pulling. Earl said he was meant to be dinner, that they tied him up and left him in a corner while they feasted. He escaped only because the clan turned on one another, fighting over scraps. In the chaos, he broke free and ran until his legs gave out. He would not step foot in the woods again. A year later, he was found dead in his home, throat torn out, though no animal tracks were ever found near the body. The Hale clan became less visible after that. Some said they had finally burned themselves out, destroyed by infighting and starvation. But the truth was more sinister. They had simply gone deeper underground. Rumors spread of caves in the hollow, passages carved by their own hands. It was said that they could vanish into the earth itself, re-emerging miles away to snatch prey before melting back into the dark. Even now, hikers who wander too close to the hollow tell the same chilling story, of hearing bones crack in the distance, of smelling smoke where no fire burns, of feeling watched by eyes that never blink. Some return with scratches across their skin, or with the memory of a voice whispering their name when no one else was there. And in the rarest, most terrifying cases, some never return at all. Their camps are found shredded, tents slashed to ribbons, food left untouched. What's missing are the bodies. as though the Hales themselves rose from the ground and dragged them back into the hollow, into a feast that never ends. Because to the Hale clan, hunger is not just a curse. It is tradition, passed down from parent to child, gnawed into their very bones, and those who wander too close to the hollow of hunger may find themselves sitting at the table, not as a guest, but as the meal. By the 1970s, the Hale clan had become more of a warning than a family. Parents told their children, "Don't wander too far, or the Hales will get you." But the hollow of hunger wasn't just a bedtime threat. It was a black hole that pulled in the curious and the unlucky alike. One of the most infamous cases was that of 3 college students from Lexington in 1974. They were anthropology majors, fascinated by Appalachian folklore. With cameras and notebooks, they hiked into the mountains, eager to study the Hale legend. For weeks, no one heard from them. When their equipment was eventually recovered, it was found scattered near the hollow. The film reels inside the cameras were warped, burned, as if they'd been tossed into fire. Only a handful of photographs survived, blurred shots of dense woods, a rotting cabin wall, and one chilling frame that showed what looked like a long, skeletal hand pressed against the lens. The students themselves were never found. Then came the reports from hunters. In 1978, 2 brothers set out to trap game near the hollow. Only one returned. His face was pale, his hands shaking. He said they had heard laughter, not the laughter of children, but of something mocking, echoing through the trees. They had followed it, thinking it was a trick, until they stumbled on a clearing filled with bones. At the center was a stone altar slick with blood, though no fresh kill lay nearby. That's when the figures appeared. Thin, filthy bodies, crouched low, eyes gleaming with firelight, though no fire was present. The younger brother tried to run. The survivor swore he heard his screams cut short, not by an animal's roar, but by the sound of chewing. By the 1980s, law enforcement could no longer ignore the missing persons. Quiet investigations were launched, though never publicly acknowledged. One deputy, who later resigned, told a confidant that he had been part of a search party sent into the hollow in 1983. They found evidence of habitation, charred pits, gnawed bones, scraps of clothing. But deeper in, they discovered something worse. A tunnel carved into the hillside, wide enough for a man to crawl through. The air inside was foul, thick with rot. When the deputy leaned in with his flashlight, he saw dozens of eyes staring back at him, blinking in unison. He staggered back, and within seconds, the ground seemed to come alive. Figures erupted from the tunnel, shrieking. The deputies opened fire, but the creatures melted into the trees. When the party regrouped, one of their own was gone. He was never recovered. Locals whispered that the Hales had become something more than human, a colony of predators, breeding generation after generation in the caves beneath the hollow. The deformities that marked their faces had grown more extreme. Some were said to walk on all fours, others with limbs too long, joints bending the wrong way. But all of them shared the same teeth, sharp, jagged, filed 2 points. In 1991, a documentary crew attempted to record the legends of Dead Man's Hollow. They interviewed locals, pieced together old reports, and finally, against warnings, entered the hollow itself. Their film was never completed. The raw footage, recovered years later, shows the crew laughing at first, treating the search like an adventure. But then their tone shifts. Strange sounds fill the tape, scratching against wood, faint moans. And what one crew member insists is singing. The last moments of the recording show the camera tumbling to the ground, capturing only frantic footsteps and the sound of tearing flesh. The crew was never seen again. What set the Hales apart wasn't just their brutality, it was their ritual. Survivors claimed the family didn't simply kill, they prepared. Victims were tied, displayed, mocked, before the clan began to feast. Some described chants, guttural words repeated in rhythm, as though the act of eating was a ceremony. Others swore the Hales kept bones, not just as food scraps, but as trophies, arranged in patterns across their cabins and caves, and always, there was fire. Witnesses described distant flames flickering in the hollow at night, accompanied by smoke that smelled of charred flesh. Farmers as far as 10 miles away swore they saw shadows dancing in the firelight, elongated figures moving in circles, arms raised in praise to something unseen. Even after so many disappearances, no one dared intervene. Locals said it was useless. Bullets could drive them back, but never kill them all. And besides, who would risk becoming the next feast? By the turn of the century, the Hale clan was spoken of less, but their presence never faded. Hikers still reported strange encounters, bones left in their campsites, food stolen but untouched, as though whoever took it had no interest in canned goods, only in flesh. Some told of waking to find their shoes missing, as if something had deliberately left them vulnerable to the rocky ground. If you think this is disturbing, just wait until you hear what comes next. And if you're enjoying these deep dives into Appalachia's darkest legends, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now, because the next family we uncover will make the Hales look almost normal. And then, in 2005, a state wildlife surveyor exploring near the hollow found something that chilled him to his core. Deep in the woods, he discovered a makeshift graveyard, dozens of mounds marked not with crosses, but with bones lashed together, forming crude symbols. Each mound was fresh, the earth still damp. When he returned with the team a week later, the graveyard was gone, every mound dug up, every trace erased, as if it had never existed. The Hale clan had not died out. They had simply grown smarter, learning when to hide and when to strike. Their hunger had not diminished. If anything, it had evolved into something ritualistic, something beyond survival, and still, people vanish near the hollow of hunger. Still, smoke is seen drifting up from the trees, and still, at night, locals swear they hear it, laughter that isn't laughter, drifting on the wind. The Hales weren't just predators. They were believers. Believers in hunger, in blood, in the twisted family bond that held them together through generations. And those who crossed their path didn't just die. They were consumed, body, soul, and memory, by the 2010s. The Hale clan had become less of a story, whispered in taverns, and more of an urban legend, spread on forums and blogs. Paranormal investigators, amateur YouTubers, and thrill-seekers started hiking into the hollow of hunger with cameras, hoping to capture proof of the so-called cannibal cult. Most came back empty-handed. A few never came back at all. And then there were those who returned but changed. One of the most infamous cases was in 2012. A group of survivalists live-streamed their trek into the hollow. At first, the footage showed them joking, setting up camp, and mocking the legend. Then, as night fell, the tone shifted. The stream captured faint chanting in the distance, low, guttural voices rising and falling. One of the survivalists claimed it was just an echo, but the sound grew louder, circling them. The video ends abruptly, cutting to static. But the final frame examined later shows what appears to be a figure crouched in the trees. Its limbs were too long, its mouth stretched unnaturally wide, filled with teeth. 3 of the survivalists disappeared. Only one was found weeks later, naked, covered in scratches and dried blood, wandering a roadside miles away. When questioned, he muttered the same words over and over. "They don't just eat you, they keep you." Another chilling account came from 2017, when a pair of spelunkers entered a cave system near the hollow. They discovered tunnels far deeper than any map recorded. The walls were carved with symbols made of bone and hair, woven together like grotesque murals. At the deepest point, they found what they described as a nursery. Small pits, lined with rags, bones, and the remains of animals. But the rags were stained, and the bones weren't all animal. That's when the singing began, soft, broken voices chanting in the dark. The spelunkers fled, but one claimed that as he crawled out, He felt a hand clutch his ankle thin, skeletal, with nails like knives. He never went caving again. The most disturbing modern report came in 2020. During the pandemic, when abandoned trails became playgrounds for curious explorers. A hiker posted photos online showing crude effigies hanging from tree stalls made of skin, bone, and twine. Some commenters claimed they were hoaxes. But when the hiker didn't return home, search parties were sent. His body was never found. Only his phone was recovered, its final photo showing a blurry figure with white eyes peering from behind a tree. Experts who studied the Hale legend began to suggest something darker that the clan had adapted. Generations of isolation and brutality had created not just deformity, but a culture built on secrecy, rituals, and survival. They no longer killed recklessly. They watched, stalked, and chose carefully, ensuring their existence remained a myth rather than a crime scene. And yet, every so often, the facades slipped. In 2022, campers on the edge of the hollow reported seeing fires burning in the distance. They swore they heard drums beating in rhythm and voices chanting. At dawn, they found animal bones arranged in circles outside their tents. Though no tracks led in or out, what makes the Hale clan more terrifying than any ghost story is the possibility that they never left. While other Appalachian legends fade into folklore, the Hales adapt. Their hollow is avoided, but never abandoned. Their rituals grow stranger, their numbers uncertain. Some believe the clan has interbred so deeply with itself that they no longer resemble humans. Others think they've mixed with outsiders, luring victims not just for food, but for bloodlines, creating children raised in darkness, taught only hunger and ritual. But perhaps the most chilling thought is this. What if the Hales are no longer confined to the hollow of hunger? Survivors have claimed they've seen figures miles away, watching from tree lines, following trails, leaving their bone-made symbols as warnings. If true, then the Hale curse has spread beyond one hollow. The hollow of hunger still stands today. Locals refuse to go near it. Maps don't mark it. And yet, every year, people vanish in those woods. Hikers, campers, wanderers, all swallowed by the same darkness that has haunted Appalachia for centuries. And when the wind cuts through those trees, some still swear they hear it. That broken laughter, that terrible chanting, and the gnashing of teeth. The Hale clan isn't just a family. They're a legacy, a blood-bound nightmare that refuses to die. And if you find yourself in those woods, remember, these legends are born for a reason. If the twisted tale of the Hale clan left you disturbed, remember this is only one of many hidden horrors buried in Appalachia. The hollow of hunger still whispers with secrets, and there are countless more families and legends waiting to be unearthed. If you're brave enough to keep exploring the darkest corners of these mountains, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell, because the next story might just be even more unsettling than this one. And tell me in the comments, would you dare to spend a night in the hollow?